Hello dear students. Today we will discuss about origin and history of Central Asian nomadic empires. There are certain objectives. First one is understanding the meaning of nomadism, differentiate nomadism from pastoral nomadism, understand the geography of Central Asia, the nature of nomads and nomadic empires in Central Asia. Introduction. Central Asia is notable for its nomadism, pastoral nomadism, and nomadic empires. Historians have always been interested in the nomadic tribes of Central Asia, and these nomads have been given a special position in the history of the nomadic world. Due to its diversified geography, Central Asia has always been home to a diverse population. Sedentary lifestyle, also known as sedentarism, is the practice of settling people in one area and using agriculture as a primary means of subsistence. In contrast, nomads are a group of individuals that move about from one place to another. The local environment in a region plays a fundamental role in the adoption of nomadism. In the context of Central Asia, nomadism and sedentarism were related because along with foraging, certain nomadic communities also adopted pastoral nomadism, which actually gave rise to nomadic empires. Tribes started to form when the hunter-gatherers of the Bronze Age began living in small family units. In order to find pastures for their herds, these tribes had to shift from one location to another. The emergence of these powerful pastoral nomadic groups and their subsequent attacks on sedentary societies led to the development of the nomadic empires. According to A.M. Khazano, pastoral nomadism is a food extracting economy in which the group as a whole depends on its herds for food supply. Therefore, nomadism and pastoral nomadism are completely dissimilar. In pastoral nomadism, however, the nomads used to raise herds for their livelihood and traveled in search of pasture grounds for their herds. The people of Central Asia adopted pastoral nomadism where they were totally dependent on the herds for survival to satisfy all of their needs. The nomads' commitment to the land was limited in the absence of cultivation and regular settlement, lasting only as long as it produced animal feed. They needed extensive pasturage for their herds, therefore, they stuck together within groups of 4 to 5 families. They traveled from one pasturage location to another with their herds during various periodic seasons. They also used to camp in mountainside valleys and close to forests during the winter. Nomadism is based on one or a combination of pastoralism, foraging, agriculture, or trade-based economies. Geographical features of Central Asia. Undefined geographically, Central Asia refers to the vast and diversified region that is bordered in the south by a massive mountain range, of which the Himalayas are a component. Its eastern boundary might be anywhere between the lakes Balkh and Baikal, possibly near the river Irtysh, and its northern boundaries could be roughly located around the Ural Mountains, the Aral Sea, and the Caspian Sea. The 5 republics of Central Asia are Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. Some individuals also include Afghanistan, Mongolia, the Tibetan and Xinjiang regions of China due to geographical proximity and ethnic cultural similarities. The region's natural environment and climate are incredibly diverse. Geographically, the southern and eastern regions are mountainous, whereas the western and northern regions have extensive plains. The Copper Dog mountain range, which extends from the southwest to the Pamir and Tian Sha in the east, separate Central Asia from other continents. The Central Asian forest belt had a width of 500 to 1000 miles, and its southern steppe belt stretched from Hungary to Mongolia. As a result, Central Asia's extensive grasslands and abundance of islands, oceans, and lakes contributed to the rise of nomadic empires. The Caspian Sea is in Central Asia's west, Lake Balkhash is in the east, and the Aral Sea is in the middle of the continent. There are two major river networks, the Sair and Amu Daryas, which join near the Aral Sea, the Karakum, also known as Black Sands, and Kaizyalkum deserts border the Aral Sea to the south and west respectively. Northern Turkmenistan's Karakum desert received enough rains for plants and vegetables to flourish there. Kaizyalkum is located in Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. In the spring, this desert was planted with vegetables and other plants that were best suited to sustaining a small nomadic population. In addition to these characteristics, the area is dotted with three oases: the Khivian oasis close to Amu Darya's mouth, the Ziravshan Valley between Samarkand and Bukhara, and the Fargana Valley in the Pamir Mountains north. The steppe and mountains that surround these areas were only marginally useful for agriculture, but their fertile pasture land proved suitable for the settlement of a nomadic population. Central Asia's complete isolation from oceanic influence is its most noticeable geographical feature. Life depends on water, but historically Central Asia has been a region with a water shortage. In addition, the high mountain peaks prevented the summer winds and Central Asian monsoons from reaching the area. High winds and pressure also prevented winter rain in the Mediterranean. Nevertheless, only the Atlantic summer westerly airflow that reached Central Asia was prone to fluctuations. Although there was a low pressure gully between the Saharan high pressure system to the south and the polar high pressure system to the north, rainfall in Central Asia was unpredictable. Humans had only two options in this situation: either stay near water sources or follow the course of the water wherever it might be found. Nevertheless, this meant that all arable cultivation had to be stopped. The pastoral economy, which freed men from the labor of cultivating land and even from settling permanently in one location, was preferred by nomadic tribes. Now, development of nomadism in Central Asia. Hunter-gatherers and fishermen lived in Central Asia from the 6th to the 4th millennia BC. Many communities started using metal around 2000 BC, which contributed to bring in the Bronze Age. In Central Asia, the emergence of a nomadic social structure dates back to the Bronze Age's later stages, that is 13th to 12th century BC. These fishermen and hunter-gatherers started to band together and hunt in groups throughout the Bronze Age. Often they were from the same family. The establishment of the tiny tribes in the Central Asian region was made possible by this grouping of hunter-gatherers. The so-called steppe bronze was left behind the herdsmen from the steppes and semi-deserts who supplanted the culture of hunters and fishers who engaged in some type of productive economy here during the 2nd millennium BC. Small groups of people had established permanent settlements in the area as early as 4500 BC, when they started engaging in agricultural activities like cattle herding. The vast country of Kazakhstan, which has unique geographical features, had a significant role in the development of nomadism through Central Asia. In order to move from one location to another in search of new pastures, the dispersed nomadic communities used it to manage herds of sheep, goats, horses, and camels. Humans engage in a practice known as transhumance, in which they look for new pastures. For their livestock, these nomads domesticated horses, camels, sheep, cattle, and yaks, and they used them to produce food and clothing. Since living a nomadic lifestyle left them without access to shelter, fuel, transportation, grain, and metal, they were dependent on the sedentary neighbors. The domestication of horses in the steppe is the origin of nomadic culture. First, horses were raised for their meat and were only used as a food source. The Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and Chinese civilizations were all very familiar with horses. However, they were not aware of horseback riding. Horses were not utilized to pull chariots or wagons for transportation until roughly 4000 BC. During this time, people started domesticating horses. Wagon use began in Mesopotamia and moved towards Central Asia. Chariots were pulled by horses up until the 3rd millennium BC. By 2000 BC, nomadic tribes were deploying war chariots on wheels. Around 2000 BC, the use of horses became popular, and the lack of water made it difficult for the area to practice substantial agriculture. As per Peter B. Golden, by 2000 BC, some subsistence agriculturalists undertook in seasonal migrations to create pastures in the steppe because they had become largely, if not entirely, dependent on their herds. They started living as pastoral nomads around 2000 BC. The use of horses became popular, and the lack of irrigation systems due to the water deficit made it difficult for the area to practice substantial agriculture. This was a significant contributing element to the expansion of pastoralism in Central Asia. The steppe nomads of Eurasia had started utilizing iron seats while riding on horses by the time the nomads of Central Asia became well acquainted with horses. In the steppes, this time period is known as the horse culture period. The Scythians were the first to invent horseback riding with iron sheets. Additionally, they had developed the riding saddle. The nomadic group Elan, who were already familiar with iron, had begun employing stirrups at about the same period. A stirrup is a loop or ring placed to both sides of a horse's saddle to support a rider's foot when mounting and riding the horse. When these nomadic groups began riding horses, their clothing underwent a dramatic change, and they began to wear trousers, which allowed them to move their legs freely while riding. The Scythians also adopted leather footwear. Beginning in Central Asia, the use of leather boots and shoes gradually expanded to other regions of the world. Scythians once used protective armor that doubled as a shield. A protective chest plate was part of the armor and was worn across the torso. They wore helmets as well, but leather was used to make each of these items. The usage of chariots was abandoned by the nomadic communities in favor of using individual horses for riding, as they became aware of the strength of the horse and of horseback riding. Riding a horse instead of a chariot gave ease and speed of movement due to steppes' uneven terrain. For the next several millennia, horse riding consequently became a crucial element in the nomads' ability to rule the area. In addition to horses, yaks, cattle, and camel were also utilized for transportation, and permitted to supply the nomads' dairy requirements. These animals were produced and proven useful in various areas of the steppe landscape, since they each had distinct subsistence requirements in terms of grass and grazing space. The villages of the nomadic tribe were an important additional characteristic. Due to their nature as nomadic tribes, they did not construct any permanent structures and instead depended on tents. The yurt is a distinctive tent structure that was developed by Central Asian nomads. Every group had a few yurts, each of which could accommodate roughly 5 people. Tents with a light wooden construction covered with skin or felt, which could easily be constructed and taken down, was how the yurts were described. The unique feature of yurts, like any other tent, was their ease of disassembly and transportation. The style of yurt used by nomadic people determined the state of that particular tribe. The division of the yurts followed social hierarchy ideologies. The size of a nomad's yurt increased with his social standing. These had conical roofs and were essentially cylindrical in shape. They were typically constructed from layers of skins or woven carpets along with wood, willow branches, and leather crosspieces. A wooden lattice divided into 6 to 10 sections served as the framework of yurts. These sections may be enlarged or pressed together to form a binding. The yurt's interior furnishings were sparse and covered in felt mats and carpets. Herodotus, who wrote about the Scythian, the earliest nomadic people in 449 BC, is where we first learn about these yurts. He described the ancient Eastern Iranian Mesogetian nomads as a people without fortified towns, living like Scythians in wagons which they take with them wherever they go. Accustomed, one and all, to fight on horseback with bows and arrows, and dependent for their food not upon their agriculture but upon their cattle. After conquering the Roman Empire, the Huns built one of the greatest nomadic empires, and they also helped to popularize the yurt in Central Asia. Grasslands, animals used for food, and movement were the main components of nomadic pastoralism. These 3 things combined may meet the basic material needs of humans for food, clothes, and shelter. Sheepskin, spun and woven woolen clothes, and leather or felt footwear were among the items of clothing worn by Central Asian nomads. Layers of animal skins were used to make the opulent luxury known as fur. Wherever they thought they might find grass, the nomads went. However, the struggle against the hostile environment and unpredictable weather made life difficult. Nomadic pastoralism also did not allow for a self-sufficient way of living. Although a diet based on meat was high in protein, nomads needed grains to supplement their diet's carbohydrate component. Additionally, they understood the value of obtaining iron tools and weaponry. Thus, the sustenance and lifestyle demand of the nomads were met and improved by sedentary group of farmers, artists, and merchants throughout Central Asia. When purchasing from these stationary communities was an option, the nomads did so. In other instances, they had to employ forces to secure the goods they required. These clashes with sedentary societies were sparked by the latter. Therefore, the rise in the need for cattle to meet nomads' household needs coincided with climate change and led to the growth of nomadism. Additionally, the development of new technology like horseback riding and carts was crucial to the expansion of nomadism in Central Asia. Now, nomads and nomadic empires in Central Asia. geographical factors clearly contributed significantly to the growth of nomadism in Central Asia. Water was scarce in Central Asia, which led people to migrate in search of water to survive. Because of this, nomadic pastoralists emerged who focused on moving herds from pasture to pasture around a given location, but moving the point itself, generally in a set cycle. The nomads proceed steadily in the direction of pasture land. The climate in Central Asia was perfect for the pastoral economy, which allowed men to forego the labor of land cultivation and even permanent settlement in one place. As a result, the people of Central Asia embraced a pastoral nomadic lifestyle in which they completely relied on their herds for subsistence. The native people of Central Asia started maintaining herds in the 3rd millennium, and herding became their primary occupation. During the 2nd millennium BC, a community of people who rode horses first appeared among steppe-dwelling stock herders. When these nomadic groups began riding horses and herding herds for a living, this marked the beginning of the nomadic period. Iron weapons like bows were used during the second phase. They were able to fire in many directions even while mounted thanks to these bows. These nomads conquered the settled civilizations by the employment of weapons. These nomads were experts in military strategy. Generally speaking, every member of the tribe was an accomplished horse rider and a skilled fighter. In contrast, there were typically barely a dozen trained soldiers in the region's inhabited settlements. Due to their proficiency in battle, nomads were able to easily overthrow settled civilizations and control the settled people. A well-planned route and pastures were used by the warrior civilization of nomads to wander in search of water and grazing. The nomads were able to survive out of milk and meat for as long as they needed to, and they mostly used animal products for their tools, clothing, and housing. The groups that did not practice farming and relied on their sedentary neighbors for agricultural products were the true nomadic ones. They used to buy luxury consumer products and agricultural supplies from the settled population. In exchange, they gave them services as well as items created by nomadic communities using animal skin. People who were sedentary imitated nomads' weapons, jewelry, fashions, and traditions. Agricultural sedentism was essential to pastoral nomadism. The horses that the Central Asian nomads kept in the past served as the major representation of their wealth and the core of their way of life. According to Beckwith, the vast bulk of the nomads' luxuries were acquired through friendly commerce with the established cultures. However, the nomads were enraged and largely looted their lands if the settled people put any barriers in the way of this trading arrangement. Grain, weapons, tools, and opulent textiles were necessities for the wandering tribes. Similar to stationary people, nomadic communities were needed for meat, wool, transport animals, leather, and security. The nomads were constantly prepared to fight, and if they ever felt threatened, they plundered and looted the settled territory. On the other hand, if the settlers triumphed over the nomads, they would receive nothing in return. The interaction between them is succinctly described by Beckwith in his statement that the steppe could offer both government and protection for the OCs, that is, settled population needs. The OCs could supply both governance and education, which the steppe lacked. As a result of asserting their dominance over the settled population, the nomads of the steppe established nomadic empires. When these nomadic people were split up into several groups, they lacked the strength to resist the agrarian settlements of the steppe. But when they came together as one group, they were the settled empire's most effective adversaries. In Central Asia, the development of nomadic empires took place in three stages. The first is the tribal organization of clans without a strong leader. Nomadic tribes typically camped in small groups of 4 to 5 families who traveled together to access the pasture facilities. The growth of tribes and chiefdoms is the subject of the second phase. The chiefdoms oversaw the many tribal organizations. Later, all of these tiny nomadic groups came together under the control of a powerful nomadic group that was in charge of the tribal confederation's military structure. Following the destruction of established civilization by these chiefdoms, the third phase saw the emergence of nomadic empires. Almost all of the nomadic clans participants in this tribal union were skilled warriors and strong military men. Additionally, the use of horses gave them the strength to assault their foe and run 200 nomadic groups in Central and West Asia quickly. The nomadic tribes had several distinctive characteristics that allowed them to forge an integrated empire. First of all, these nomadic groups had a strong bondage with the tribal society and were independent and autonomous. Second, every pastoralist was financially independent and had personal freedom. All of this permitted the development of nomadic empires and helped tribal groupings increase their dominance. Therefore, it is possible to define these nomadic empires as nomadic society organized on the military hierarchical basis, occupying quite wide area and exploiting nearby areas as a rule via external forms of exploitation. The nomadic empires got their start by enslaving rival nomads and integrating them into their own tribal unions. The same nomadic tribes and groupings were then combined to form a powerful tribal organization. The neighboring settled people were assaulted by the particular nomadic tribe that had gained supremacy over the others. A unique military advantage, namely horse cavalry and an imperial state structure that gave revenue to subject nomad groups rather than collecting it, were the keys to the nomads' victory. The nomadic communities, completely dependent on the settled civilizations for guidance in administrative concern because they lacked literacy and had no knowledge of irrigation, commerce, or urban systems. In addition, while establishing their dominance over the settled population, the nomads assimilated the political and cultural aspects of the settled and conquered civilizations. These nomads were powerful enough to gain political dominance in the area thanks to their military strength. These nomadic communities were able to create nomadic empires in the area by gaining political authority. Because of their unique military advantage, horse cavalry, and imperialistic state organization in which wealth was shared among all the nomadic communities, nomads continued to be successful in constructing a strong nomadic empire. Administrators who oversaw the tribe leadership and led armies in battle made up the second tier of their imperialistic leadership structure after ruling lineage. Thanks.